Hi, welcome to Shared Frequencies and the Space Between, where heart meets brain and life happens in the messy middle.
We're two best friends navigating a new chapter, sharing a space, finding our rhythm, and tuning into life's transitions.
This is a space for deep and meaningful conversations about growth, connection, and everything in between. Let's tune in to today's frequency. Hi, welcome to episode 13 of Shared Frequencies and the Space Between. We have named this episode Tuned In, Zoned Out, the Static Frequency. And our intention today is just to talk through some of the things that we have hinted at in previous episodes, like that there are potentially some flavors of neurospiciness, or however you want to phrase it in each of us. Now, a small disclaimer before we start this: none of us are diagnosed. No. You definitely present very clearly.
Yes.
But
hold on, before we go any further, you did what I did in the last
that's
episode.
No, that's very deliberate.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that was very deliberate.
Okay.
So, disclaimer, we're undiagnosed.
Yes.
We do not have any clear guidance. We've not been mapped or anything. We don't have any expertise. We're purely talking about this subject from what we have experienced and what we're living with. So, on that note, as always, I'm Elle.
And I'm Don.
Yep. And yeah, as I said, tuned in, zoned out, very apt, I think, for at least how we are
At times.
presenting.
Yeah, and it's where to start on the conversation of it. I think for me personally, I think ADHD as a thing has become really apparent to me, certainly in the last 18 months, 2 years. That I, again, self-diagnosed, fall into that zone, as it were.
Yeah.
And it's been a bit of a journey for me, in having that realization and what to do with it.
Yeah.
If anything.
Yeah.
If anything, so that's for me,
Yeah.
and when I look back, and we'll get into talking about it more once we get probably get going and things. Looking back and then going, okay, that fits, that explains that, that helps me understand that.
Yeah.
So for me, that's where it's kind of come in, and you were the one that kind of really pointed it out to me.
Okay.
When you said it to me, and I was kind of like, okay, yeah. I always had this thing where I was like, my brain doesn't necessarily function in the same way as those around me.
Yeah.
But I hadn't put a label on it. I hadn't.
But you also had this extreme, like you were so averse to labels.
Yes.
Like you had this very concrete, just it wasn't even a dislike. You were just utterly against the use of labels.
And I still am to a certain extent. I understand why the world that we live in needs them, but it's because of the way the world operates. It's not necessarily because I think they're needed, And I've since discovered that is actually a trait that comes with ADHD, and this dislike of labels and pigeonholing and categorizing, in the way that we do, of things. So that's it's still not, even when it comes to pronouns or all of those things, I'm just not comfortable with this need to label everything. And just to explain that further, it's not that I don't necessarily recognize that people have their differences, but it's kind of like, if we don't label people, if we don't categorize people, if we don't do all these things, then it reduces the opportunity for prejudice.
Yeah, I know, and
You know.
on paper, I
Yeah.
believe you're right.
Yeah.
That's just not the reality.
No, and
It's not the reality,
Yeah.
and I think again we're saying the same thing, but the world that we live in, I think there is a need
Yeah.
for that categorization because people don't treat people similar.
No.
Matter who's standing in front of them, whether you're changing the way that you behave or the way that you communicate, based on the person's skin color or age or their gender identifier, how they outwardly present.
And I fully accept it's an idealistic viewpoint that I have, you know, among a few other idealistic viewpoints that I have. But they're all tempered by the acceptance and the realization that of the world that we live in, of how society functions, of how the world functions, and how that has generated the need for it. And to try and fight it can often do more harm within that environment than, not often, can sometimes do more harm within that environment than good. What we need is a change in the environment. But that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah, that's a whole different conversation.
That's a whole different discussion.
Whole different conversation. Yeah.
So, what about you?
What about me? What?
What about you in terms of your neurospiciness and maybe coming to...
Yeah, so it's a very new thing for me to think of the potential there. Like I've always known that my head is very bouncy.
Yep.
But I don't have the classic description of like, do you know, back in the day, the early days of the internet, when you had like 800 pop-ups and each played a different song, and there was flashing lights and, you know, neon lights, and you were just like, I don't know which window or which pop-up is going off here.
Yep.
I don't have that.
Yeah.
I don't have that. I am just very bouncy, and like my brain does this sort of like chain reaction very fast. So I'll jump between subjects, and like just this afternoon when we were, you know, talking through a few things, and I was like, oh yeah, and then this, and then that, and then that, and then I ended up doing like 4 things at the time.
Yep.
So in that sense, I've always been aware that I do that. The whole songs and like connecting songs and automatically jumping to songs is also something that I've always been aware of, but it's not something that I have ever, like, you know, associated with anything.
Yeah.
I've never liked socks. I've never liked socks. And I had a boyfriend at one point, and he did not care about his socks. Like one day I caught him, and to this date he refuses this happens. And if you're listening, I'm not having this argument again. But one day, I know for a fact this happened because it traumatized my brain. So he put like, you know, an old fashioned like tennis sock, like those really tall ones. And then he had like an ankle sock on. And like, and one was like that really soft sort of cotton, and the other one is that rougher cotton type. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there are different lengths, and they sit differently on your foot, and there are different like tension on your foot, and there are different fabrics. And I just went into this full body sort of like where it's just like, oh my God, how can you do it?
Now, if he was going to have an ally of either of the two of us in that situation, it would have been me, because I wear odd socks.
But they're only odd in colour.
Yes. I couldn't imagine having odd material, thickness, length. That would just...
But like, I can't even wear like different type of ankle socks. Like, they have to be matching ankle socks because I can't do it. And then I don't even like that. Like, give me my fluffy socks. Yes, I'll wear that 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
But like actually socks that put tension on my feet. That's why there are currently 2 or 3 pairs of socks lying on the floor underneath the sofa. Like, so I've never liked them.
Yeah.
I've never liked socks. And it looks like one of my nephews is definitely falling into that category as well. He really doesn't like socks.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what it appears. He's still very young, so it might just be a phase. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't like socks. But the thing about the texture with food, that is a very new realization.
Yep.
And I was thinking about that today when I was out walking the dog, and I don't know if that's because I've never had the opportunity before, you know, or it's like, well, you're served whatever you're served, and if you don't want it or you don't eat it, then you're not getting anything else.
Yep.
So there wasn't a lot of opportunities for me to be rebellious or like, you know,
Fussy.
fighting. No, but like fighting it.
Yeah.
There also wasn't a lot of space for me to express my opinions growing up. So I don't know if I just sort of masked my way out of that, or if the way that we ate when I was younger fulfilled the boxes of different textures. I generally don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, the texture thing with food is a new thing that I have realized is a big thing for me.
Yeah. And
And temperature.
Okay.
And temperature of food. So like the last couple of times when you've had those salads that has hot elements in them, I don't like it.
yeah. Certain leaves and stuff like that.
But even the one that we had the other day with the grains and then the spinach,
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like flavor-wise, it worked really well. But because it was supposed to be a salad, like if the spinach had been wilted through and it was like a grains dish, that would have been fine.
Was
but
that
because it was
halfway?
served up, it was like neither one or the other. I don't do well with that.
Okay. And yeah.
But I didn't realize.
Yeah. And it kind of came about, well, not came about, but I think it was like really highlighted when we started talking about the whole
Crisps and sandwiches.
crisps and sandwiches thing. Yeah.
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 But I think it's in those conversations where you meet the other that you realize that there is an other.
Yeah.
You know, it's not.
And we're very good at questioning each other when things like that kind of pop up. And I don't mean like, I mean like, is that a flavor thing? Is it a texture thing? What is it? You know, we have those conversations about things quite naturally.
Yeah.
You know, we're interested
Yeah.
in each other and their own kind of takes on it. You know. So, and I find that really helpful for me in dealing with some of my nuances. Is to have somebody to talk it through with.
Yeah.
Who knows me well.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And who does it without judgment or any, you know.
I definitely judge you when you say nonsense things like adding crisps to a tuna mayo sandwich, but I'm interested in why it doesn't bother you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But I also think that's why having this conversation right now is very important. Just because there's been a couple of like, not incidents or anything, but just like it's come up a couple of times where you're like, oh yeah, this is definitely a thing. You know, there was a real, and because I'm not on TikTok, I don't see all of these videos and like women self-diagnosing with like autism and ADHD, or women getting diagnosed with ADHD or autism or whatever it is a really big thing.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But ADHD presents differently.
It does,
in men and women.
Yeah, very.
And because medicine, psychology, all of these things that were done, especially around ADHD in the 60s and 70s, it focused on men or boys, the males. The understanding of how it presents in women is behind.
But any medical thing is, you know, let's not get into that because that's going to get me really angry. I think we should sometime in the future. I think we should do an episode where diving into the Invisible Women, I think the book is called.
Okay.
The book that I got very angry about. So I need to get to a stage where I can re-listen to it and take notes, and then we can talk about it.
And I can listen to it too.
Yeah, so I definitely think we should do that. And again, I haven't done any research because this was very much like this could be interesting to talk about.
Yep.
So I haven't done any massive research. But Katie has. She's done some research on this. So again, that is Katie Fillmore from the Pink Pill podcast. And episode 23, she's talking about specifically ADHD and autism in women and how it presents and all of that compared to men. So she pulled some stats, and I just took some notes. So she says that boys get diagnosed 3 to 4 times higher, like more often than girls do. The majority of women gets diagnosed with ADHD in their 30s.
Okay.
And that's also the case for autism, but autism is obviously a wider spectrum, and it's harder to get. And again, women present very, very differently. So generally speaking, now this is obviously not accurate, because there are definitely some women who are externally hyperactive, and there are definitely some men who present with ADHD symptoms that are internally hyperactive. But she says generally girls are a lot better at masking, because most of their symptoms are internal. So it's that internal hyperactivity, so overthinking and like confusion and forgetfulness and some of those things, and they're a bit more disruptive. And I definitely think you also fall into that category of like internal disruption or internal over or hyperactivity. Whereas most boys will get diagnosed because they present externally. And that's where, back in like the 90s when this really became a big thing, it was that whole, oh, you're hyperactive, oh, you can't sit still, you can't concentrate, you can't do these things. And it's always boys, right? She was then also talking a bit about, because she's got, so she says 50 to 75% of women with ADHD are undiagnosed. So of all of the women in the world who have ADHD, 50 to 75% of those women with ADHD are undiagnosed. And I just thought that was such an insane statistic. Now, this woman, Katie Fillmore from the Pink Pill podcast, I generally cannot recommend this podcast enough. She's just so insightful, and she really does her research. And, I just haven't had capacity to dive in and check. But then again, she really does her work. She's got autism, and she has done some research on it. And she says 80% of women with autism are misdiagnosed with a mood disorder instead of a neurotype disorder like autism is. So a lot of women get misdiagnosed, and that's the case for ADHD as well, with like anxiety, bipolar, borderline, depression, like all of those things. And again, it's because the medical community just, they don't understand women. They don't understand how the women body work, how our minds work, how our entire neural network and how we present. And then again, the medication doesn't necessarily work on women either, because the medication is tested on 20-year-old white men.
No, that's for sure.
So that was a bit of a tangent there. But so it's definitely, it definitely presents differently.
But so and that's it. I mean, and I have done endless reading and and whatnot into it, and and I could sit here and talk for hours about what I've learned on that front, but none of it really changes who I am or how I cope, which is a word I kind of use a little bit kind of reluctly. Because, and I think that's also because I have come so late to the understanding of it, so when I look back, let's go back. When I look back at my childhood, I was a high performer in school. I struggled in the school environment, in the classroom environment. School bored me. I found school really boring, which meant I became mischievous. Because I would go in, I would read the textbook on day one, do no studying, do a quick flick through the textbook 20 minutes before an exam, go in and ace the exam. So the bit in between, the schooling bit and turning up every day and whatnot, for me just felt pointless. I didn't. I was just. I wasn't even considered gifted. By most teachers, I was just considered to be a pain in the ass. So that was kind of, there was that going on. My bouncing between hobbies and things.
Sorry, that was the dog ringing. I think she's hungry.
Ringing the bell. So we pause for 2 minutes and give her a bit of food.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Okay, short intermission. We're back.
Yeah, sorry. Her ladyship rang her bell and indicated that she was hungry and... Excuse me, but have you not noticed that it is my dinner time? So sorry.
So so that was I had that in school. I hobbies wise, I would bounce from between hobbies and interests and stuff like that, and all the things that would be seen as typically ADHD. But at that time, I wasn't aware that it was a thing. I just thought that that's what I did, because it was what I did.
But that was also late 80s, mid 90s.
Yeah. It was kids being diagnosed with ADHD, or that then was practically unheard of. I can't even think of anybody that I knew or was in school with at the time that was diagnosed in with anything of that form.
We had a class, like a specific class, in the school that I was in, like kind of like a special needs class.
Yeah.
But it was specifically for children who had some sort of learning disability or needed extra help or just couldn't sit still in the classroom.
Yeah.
So they were all, hats off to that teacher, because it was one teacher.
Yeah.
And then they had, I think it was a male teacher, and I think he had like 6 boys in that class and had to run. So he was like, okay, now we're doing maths.
Yeah.
But then he had children of different ages in it and had to monitor different age groups doing the same subject, but then again all acting differently and doing.
But we had that as well. We had those who required additional need or assistance with assisted learning or whatever it be. But I didn't fall into that because but that
there
was nothing wrong with
that was what it was. And like one of the boys was very clearly two of them were very clearly ADHD and that very hyperactive, they just couldn't sit still, which meant that they were disruptive to the other children in their age group class.
Oh yeah. And I wasn't that. I wasn't, as you touched on earlier, I'm not outwardly hyperactive. It's my brain that goes off at 1,000 miles an hour on a million different things. So my being mischievous within class wasn't hugely disruptive, and the kind of mischief I got up to generally involved getting the whole class involved in doing something mischievous.
And how do you not categorize that as being disruptive to the class or the?
Because it wasn't every class, it wasn't every day. It was just.
But that's still disruptive.
Yeah, but most of the time, all I would do is I'd pull out a puzzle book and just have my puzzle book within the textbook and just zone out from what was going on in the class, because I was not learning anything from what the teacher was saying because I'd already read the textbook. And it was that's the school system was learning how to parrot what was in the textbooks and stuff. So
yeah, I obviously don't know how it is now, but I think it still is a bit like that.
So that was that. So going through that, I was an overachiever. I had my first. I had my first job, I think, when I was 9, filling sacks of tatties in the local shop, and then not long after that, doing paper round. Age of 12, did my first mobile disco as a mobile disc jockey. Was working in the fish and chip shop. Was due to go off to university. Took a summer job, ended up staying on in that because they offered me the chance to do my financial planning exams on the job, as it were. Supposed to be a 3-year thing, did it in 6 months.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean we've touched about
Yeah.
that, you know, in the previous episodes, like in the first few episodes of the podcast.
So yeah, and then really, I think when it really came to light for me was in a previous job when this was after you and I kind of known each other, and where I became aware of the fact that this was at that point in time it was a potentially I had ADHD. Even
was
though
it
deep
not
down
your
I knew.
manager who flagged it to you first? It wasn't
Well,
me, was it? It was your manager.
We had talked about it. We
Okay.
very briefly, just on the kind of fringes of things. But again, you could be right. You could be right.
I'm like, because I remember it, and you were like, you came out of your 1-to-1, and you're like, you're not gonna believe what she just said to me.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, yeah, duh.
Yeah, but that's very possible.
But the way that she did it, and she was.
So it had never been something that had been brought up between, or been discussed, or never something that had ever crossed my mind as being as potentially that I had the ADHD, and we were sitting in the 1-to-1, and she basically turned around and said to me, if I was looking for concessions and whatnot to be made because of my ADHD, then I would need a diagnosis. And I was like, because first of all, I was not asking for any concessions or anything about it. It was, we'll not go into it. That's you know, it's not far enough back for, I think, to be going too much into it. But yeah, I was, and that just like, and I was just, yeah, I was that angered me.
No, and rightly so. Rightly so. She massively overstepped the mark there.
Yes.
Massive.
But again, possibly coming from a good place, but just done in the wrong way.
Yeah, no, she was never malicious. She was never malicious.
Yeah.
But it was she definitely overstepped there.
And then that kind of got me. Yeah, I think you might be right. Actually, I think that's what it was, because then we'd had the conversations, and then I'd kind of parked it and just maybe a little bit of denial type thing going on, and then it came up again, and I was like, so do I go for a diagnosis? Do I ask to get a diagnosis?
Where do you stand on that now?
To protect myself. I'll come to that in 2 seconds. So I spoke to my GP, and my GP had basically gone, yeah, looking at your history, it's not something that's held you back in terms of when you were at school or in your work life. You know, you're achieving, so you wouldn't get priority for a diagnosis. Children get priority, and you're looking at potentially like a 3-year waiting list to get it through the NHS system. If I wanted it, I'd have to go private, and that would cost thick end of £1,000. Which you know, going private and paying for it wasn't something that was going to put me off necessarily getting the diagnosis. But then we were at a retreat. So at that point in time, I was really seriously considering it. Then we were at a retreat, and there was somebody there who'd had a diagnosis.
That was a year ago.
Yeah, who'd had a diagnosis and had medication, and I was speaking to them, and she was like, yeah, medication wasn't good. It felt like it dulled her down. And tuned her down, and she didn't like it. So that kind of put me there. I know if getting a diagnosis doesn't mean to say you have to have medication. Yeah. But then in mind kind of going, well, if I'm not going to get medication, why do I need a diagnosis? I've got this far in life without a diagnosis. Why do I need a diagnosis? So where I sit on it now is that I don't feel I need it.
The diagnosis?
Okay. For me. I don't feel I need it for me. Obviously, at the moment, I'm looking for a new job. And depending on the job that I end up in, I may do, just in terms of protecting myself. Yeah. Because I know there's certain ways that I work, there's the ways that I do things that don't fit the mold within certain corporate structures. And I would just need to, I think, to ensure people took the time to understand.
Or didn't just immediately dismiss you.
Yeah. You know, so I'm still open to it on that basis. But it's not something I feel I need personally at this moment in time. I don't want to be medicated. I don't think I need to be medicated. I have, over the last 40 odd years of being on this planet have built up my own ways of dealing with it. For most things, you know, I do have moments where I just need a little bit of intervention, or where I welcome a bit of intervention from somebody, most recently yourself, just to point out that I'm having a moment where I'm bouncing, or where I'm hyper focused, you know, and in many of those cases it's just a case of, you know, it's now 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Have you eaten today, or have you been stuck in hyper focus all day and not eaten? You know, which is the one that the thing that catches me out most.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the biggest one, where it's like, have you had anything to drink and eat today?
Yeah.
No, the thing that happened today was a new one, where it was like, no, stop, step away, go lie down, give your brain a break, because this is not, you're spiraling, and this is not good.
I actually managed to stop myself before the message came through from you.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I'd went out to go and buy some retro sweets from a shop which was about 20 minutes drive away. Got there.
Absolute dopamine mining.
Yeah, that was what I was after. I wanted a very specific sweet, candy for our American audience.
If there is an American audience.
There's always an American audience. And yeah, got there to discover that the shop was shut, which a normal kind of run of things, you kind of go, oh well, shop was shut. But I had checked before I'd left, and everything that I could find said it was open, and they weren't open. So I was immediately like, okay, this is not on. Jumped on, left a review on their Google business listing, put in a recommended change to their opening hours on the Google business listing, and then went, right, okay, I'm now on a retro candy quest. So started looking to see where there was other retro candy shops. Found one that was maybe another 15 minutes away. Thought, I'm going to quadruple check because I'm not going to get burnt twice, and found that not only was the shop not open, it was never going to be open again because it didn't exist anymore. So I was like, okay, I need to start heading back in the direction of home. I thought I'll try some of the supermarkets. Maybe there's a chance that some of them do something retro, and I wasn't getting anywhere. So I started unconsciously, my brain started going, right, we need to get this dopamine some other way.
Yeah.
So it was like the tomato pasta,
Yes.
the pasta sauce.
Yeah.
You know, we'd got pasta sauce the other day, but it wasn't the one that you ideally
It
wanted.
wasn't my dopamine food.
No. So I was in the supermarket and I thought, do you know what? Doing stuff for other people, I get a dopamine hit off of. Again, it's an ADHD thing. So I thought, I'll buy that pasta sauce and I'll get that pasta sauce, and that will be that. You know, I'll get a little lift from that. And then there was salted caramel oat milk for putting in your coffee, and we both like that. Occasionally, I thought, I'll do that, and I just started buying stuff for the dopamine hit, and then I was going, oh, I'm not far away from a shop that I know sells crisps that we both really, really like.
Yeah.
That were supposed to be limited edition for Christmas, but if you go to the smaller version, I know I'm not telling anybody because I'm going around the country making sure I hoover up all of these crisps. The smaller versions of these shops might still have some kicking about. So
yeah, you've already emptied out the absolute stock in one shop.
Yes.
But apparently you hadn't made it to this shop yet.
So they had some. Good. So I went in there and got some of those crisps, and then I was just like, I need to stop this. I need to stop. This is a spiraling thing, and head for home. So, and I just sent you that message, and then I know you don't always have to tell me stop. You know, you'll send me a message going, do you need a chat?
Yeah.
And if I get that kind of message, I'm kind of going, okay, this is your intervention.
Yeah.
Kind of cue, but I'd already made the decision at that point to head back home.
Well, you sent me the message going, yeah, they were closed, and I'm now rage buying other stuff. And I was like, oh crap, this is really not good. But then you were clearly already back here.
Yeah.
Because then I sent the message immediately.
Yeah.
And then like 4 minutes later or whatever, you walk through the door.
Yeah. So
with a bag full of stuff.
but that, what was it, an hour or so I was gone?
I think you're about an hour and a half.
Yeah. That exhausted me because I had to go for a nap.
Yeah, so that was when I was like, right, like your brain is clearly spiraling.
Yeah.
Like just go lie down on the bed. Don't sit in the chair. Like go lie down on the bed. And then it didn't take long. Yeah. And then I heard you snoring.
Yeah. Oh, it was a proper nap, a proper sleep. So
but I think this conversation is important to have here on the podcast, not to teach anyone anything or to bring any attention or to do that, but just to sort of like put it into perspective on how we communicate and where this sort of works, because there's been a couple of things recently where because of your ADHD you don't see consequences. Like you don't think in consequences. Whereas because of the way that I am, that's the first thing that I think of. So I'm very worst first, always. Because the consequence of not doing that right now, like I'm not a big procrastinator. If I procrastinate, that's because I'm on a very downward spiral.
Yeah.
So me procrastinating is an absolute warning sign. So there's like, well, no, I think we should do this now. Like, I think we should get it done. I think we should think about this, or like, I need you to talk me through this.
Yeah.
So like that whole not being aware of consequences, that's the big thing where, and then when you think very fast through like 100,000 possibilities and you think through,
but the world comes at me fast.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're helping me with something, you're like da 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 da, there, here, there, bam bam, so like that, and I'm like, whoa, like no, you need to talk me through it. And then another thing is, if we're talking about something and I'm providing you with new information and I talk through it to you and then you take a break and then you repeat it back to me, but you don't repeat it back to me, you repeat it back to yourself out loud.
Yes.
But to me, it then sounds like you're either questioning me or like you are correcting me, but by repeating the same thing. And again, that's an internal thing for me. Because I'm used to not being taken serious. This whole like, as long as a man repeats it, it's more valid than if a woman says it whole thing. Again, we'll get into that when we get to talk about the invisible women. But I think that's where it comes into play for our relationship.
Oh, for sure. And it's, and I know that there's things that I do. I know that there's things that I do that just don't sit naturally with you.
Naturally we have very different way of thinking and very different way of doing things and processes.
But again, because we communicate really well, you know, we talk it, we understand it, and we kind of go. It doesn't mean to say that it doesn't annoy or whatnot. Again, but we understand it. You know, so.
But the thing about like not thinking in consequences, that's the thing that really intrigues me about your ADHD. Do you want to talk through that a little bit? Because I don't think that's necessarily something that's wildly known as a thing for ADHD.
Yeah, so the typical drivers for a neurotypical person, so the things that kind of drive people forward, are rewards, the importance of something, or the consequences of something or not something. That's the three kind of main drivers for people. So if you reward somebody, they will do something. If it's important, they will do it. If there's a consequence to not doing it, they will do it. Or if there's a consequence to doing it, they won't do it. Whereas with ADHD, the drivers are, is it interesting? Is there a novelty kind of factor to it? And it's not necessarily all of these, it's some or all of these. Is there a novelty factor to it? Is it challenging?
Okay.
Is there urgency?
Yeah.
and is it something you're passionate about?
Yeah. And that's the thing, like the urgency thing. The urgency thing is not necessarily importance.
No.
And it's not necessarily the consequence thing.
It's the deadline.
It's the, yeah.
Yeah, so, and that's how, I don't always work to that, but I often have to trick my brain into thinking that something is urgent.
Yeah.
To get it done. So breaking down tasks and setting deadlines, within that. But my brain's not stupid. It knows when it's trying to be tricked, so it has to be meaningful. When you're breaking it down, you have to do it in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
Or your brain just goes, yeah, I'm not stupid. Like, this is a fake deadline you're giving me, and it doesn't, that me.
Yeah.
I will always get stuff done. I will always get stuff done. It's just that sometimes, more than sometimes, I will do it last minute.
Yeah.
Or I will produce what's needed last minute. That doesn't mean to say my brain isn't... And this is the school thing that I was talking about. It's like, at the start of the term, you get given the textbook. I read the textbook. It's done. But then the thought of studying, like, why? Why, 3 months of sitting in classes, going over the stuff that I already know because I read it out of the book. But I think there's and I don't know I don't know how prevalent this is among people who have ADHD, is the whole eidetic memory thing, photographic memory thing.
Yeah, I'm not aware that's a very...
Yeah. My ability to just consume and retain information in that way.
Yeah, I think that's unusual.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's unusual.
So the bit all in between just seems to be a waste of time. And it's just like... And then the thing that frustrates me, and it frustrates me within my career within the work world, is, you get a piece of work to do and you've got a deadline for it, but then people will go, how are you getting on with that? And you're going like, well, it doesn't matter how I'm getting on with it. The deadline is like next week. You'll have it by the deadline.
Yeah.
So don't be checking up on me, because I've never missed a deadline. So don't be checking up on me. And then you go, I've not looked at it yet. And then they start
micromanaging.
Yeah, they start at you, and I'm kind of going, and I go like, have I ever missed a deadline? Have I ever not produced good work? No. So get off my back.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing what is being asked of me. But because I'm not doing it their way.
Yeah.
We had that in when it was like a bit like that when we were doing the quality assurance job. It was like, there was like this expectation to like plan out as far in advance as you possibly could, and that just didn't. That was just, for me, that was just like, so there's so many things that can change and whatnot. Why would I put myself in a position? So I didn't necessarily plan as far ahead as some other people did. It never stopped me from doing my job. It never impacted on how effective I was at doing my job. Actually, in a lot of cases, I saved money and was being more efficient, but it wasn't the way it should be done.
No, so just to add a little bit of additional onto that, you were only able to get away with it because of the patch that you were covering.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Whereas for me, where it is a lot more spread out, that would not have worked. Because getting that. But again, so that was a circumstance for you, but they were trying to put you into a cookie cutter.
Yeah.
Right? They were trying to get you to do things because for everyone else almost, that would not have worked. Yeah. But it worked for you because of where you were. And then also,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, it's just like, if I'm getting the job done and I'm doing a good job, don't come at me because we're 2 weeks out from a deadline and I've not done anything, because I don't like that's having, you didn't say I needed 50% done by this point in time or whatever, so there's no deadline there, so it's just like, and that's what I talked about, we kind of touched on previously. It's about people not understanding or appreciating or realizing where we're at. So yeah. I'm just trying to think if there was anything kind of else that kind of we might have wanted to touch on. I'm kind of also aware that we've talked a lot more about me.
Because you present a lot more than I do it's easier to sort of
Yeah.
touch upon. So like my things are, again, potentially a bit more towards the female autistic ADHD.
Yeah.
Simply like I don't like it when my routines change. Like I need my routines.
Yep.
I also have this constant sort of like timer in my head. Like if I'm doing something or if I'm going somewhere, like if we need to go to the cinema, like I want to leave at a certain time, not because, you know.
Actually, that's a really good example of what I was just talking about and what we're talking about, consequences and urgency and deadline. And it's something I work on, especially when we're doing stuff like that. It's because you're like, we're leaving at 10 past.
Yeah.
I will be at the door ready to go at 10 past.
Yeah, you've gotten very good at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
And I'm trying very hard to just like relax that a bit.
Because I haven't moved at 2 minutes past, and you have, because
Yeah.
you're doing your, because I haven't moved, because I know in my head I will get up, I need to go there to put that on and there to put my shoes on, and I know how long that takes me, and I will be at the car ready to go when you say it. So that's probably a good example of it.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get better at going, actually, do you know what, getting that off your butt 2 minutes earlier and just getting moving.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think it's easy for me because I'm doing it for you.
Okay.
You know, because
Yeah.
if I'm doing something for somebody else,
Yeah.
it's easier for my brain to do something.
Yeah.
It's easier for me to do for others than sometimes it is to do for myself.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
In that regard. So that's that was a good example. That was also a really good example of interruption.
Yeah, no, you've been very bad at that recently. But again, that's also because there is a lot happening
Yes.
in your life right now, and like, you know, and especially things that you're very passionate about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like that thing with like timekeeping and like and doing things and having plans, and if plans then change last minute, that throws me for a loop, like totally. Like I get very upset and like I have a physical reaction to it. I don't like it when my routine change out with my control.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at that. I'm very good at sort of like experimenting and doing things with food, but then again, I'm very particular with that. But again, I'm also not.
No.
Like I have a friend who's very particular about her food, which I'm nowhere near that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't present a lot, but there are definite things that have been subtly sort of like introduced to me where I'm like, oh yeah, I do that. Oh, okay, I do that.
Pebbling. We both do that.
Yes, we both do pebbling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do that a lot. And then the whole sort of like getting overstimulated by like sensory inputs and that. Like I get like being in a loud room, I just, I don't like it. Like, so if we're in a pub or something, and it's very loud, then I get uncomfortable and I find it very hard to concentrate on conversations. And then if I start a new show, like actually watching a new TV show or a new movie is exhausting for me.
Yeah.
Like it's exhausting for me. So I just have the same shows on repeat because I know what to expect. So like we started a show months ago and we watched the first 2 episodes in that first night, and then I got super into it and I got very emotionally attached to one character and emotionally distressed by another character. And we haven't watched a single episode since because I'm still so angry with her. And I put Bridgerton in. It was someone I watched something with someone, and they were talking about like book jail or like emotional prison. And I put Bridgerton in like an emotional prison because I was so upset. I was so upset with the Duke, and I didn't watch the last episode for months because I just wasn't ready to forgive him. And I knew it was going to happen. I've had to put, and this was before I saw the Friends episode, but I've had to put a book in the freezer because I was so angry with him, like with a character.
Yeah.
I was just like, I can't deal with you right now. You just need to go away.
Yep.
I had to stop watching Sons of Anarchy because I was too, like, I get too involved in the stories. I get like emotionally connected to the characters. I live in that world. And I also think that's what's happening in with the time traveling historian books.
Yeah.
Do you know, when there was that one Christmas story that she put out where she changed a character, like his behavior and how he was, and like just I can't explain it. It was not integral to him. Like, I was like, no, my friend would never do that. And that's almost how it feels. And I was so upset about it. So, yeah, I get very consumed.
I mean, I think there's probably another hour of chat that I could have around this, and we will in the future. We're not going to do this a part 1, part 2 thing.
No,
but it is a subject we can come back to in future. There's, I've got, there's lots of things still with me, like my fear of rejection, my propensity for info dumping, my pattern recognition. And how that is both a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, I'm quite good at that as well, but more in human behavior.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in the way that you are.
Yeah. All the contradictions that kind of come about for me with ADHD as well.
The sense of injustice, that's a really big one for me. Like, when I see or experience something that's just not right. Yeah. It makes me very angry, and the fact that I haven't been stabbed is probably more luck than anything else.
Yeah, and why
you almost got shot
twice. Yes. I think there's lots more that we can kind of dive into and whatnot, but we can do that again in the future. But I think for me, in terms of our relationship and whatnot, is that it's really. It really, I think it works because, looking at it from my side, is that you make me feel seen and heard. You, for the most part, tolerate my quirks, and
I try.
You understand, or you're willing to understand my kind of quirks. And one of the toughest things that I find, and again, I don't necessarily know if this is an ADHD thing, is my view of myself on various aspects of it. And I think I really love getting to see myself through your eyes.
Yeah.
That brings me back from when I'm having moments where I'm doing myself down. And just talking to you and having that, getting to see myself through your eyes, because I trust you, I care deeply about your how you think.
No, you can't do that. Stop it. You're going to make me cry.
So that brings me back a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So that's, but yeah, we there's definitely a lot more to dive into on this subject.
Yeah.
In the future. Once we're beyond kitchens and...
Yes, exactly. So this was episode 13. I think we're going to finish it here.
Yes.
Because otherwise we are going to just continue, I think.
Yeah.
It is very hard for us to keep to the topic and just like side questing and going off tangents. It's...
Tuned in, zoned out.
Yeah, tuned in, zoned out. And the static frequency, like how your brain just sometimes feels very static, like static electricity. So I think we should finish it here. We are starting the kitchen renovation.
Yes.
So we're going to create some space.
Yep. Yes.
We're going to create some space. So we talked that we are going to take a break.
Yes.
From having to record and being on a deadline, because that has been very hard recently, I feel.
Yeah, but it has been very hectic recently as well.
It has. So we're hoping taking this sort of space a bit will help.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a couple of weeks of a break.
Yeah.
So the next episode we will publish on the 13th of May. So Tuesday the 13th of May.
So
this episode here,
this is the 29th.
yeah, exactly. So the episode here, that is episode 13, and that will go live on the 29th.
Yes.
And then we're starting the kitchen reno that week. And then we have that following week of the kitchen reno.
Yeah.
So that gives us 2 weeks where we don't have to record,
Yes.
right? So the next episode will air on the 13th of May.
Unless it's the 20th, but intention is the 13th.
No, I'll definitely think, because there'll definitely be some things. I'm sure during the kitchen reno we will need to.
That's only 1 week break of 1 week of no podcast.
Yeah, for them, but for us,
Yeah.
that's almost 3.
Yeah. Cool.
So it will be interesting to see. But episode 14 will probably be a kitchen frequency decompressing in the chaos.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's sign off for today. Thank you so much for taking your time and listening to Shared Frequency and the Space Between.
We hope our conversation today, however bouncy, has helped you find a little more clarity in your own space between, whatever that may look like.
Yeah, maybe raised some questions and spiked your interest for doing some more research. So remember, we're all just a work in progress. We're all just figuring it out, one frequency at the time.
So if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And since we're going to take a wee break in between, you can go back and maybe listen to some of the older ones if you're just joining us mid-stream, as it were. We want to see those reviews. We want to see the feedback, or share it with somebody who might need to hear it as well.
Indeed. So until next time, keep tuning in and finding the space that works for you.
Thank
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.